Kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get notifications of our videos once we put them up. Welcome.
Hello learners, we are looking at CRE Form 1, Lesson 12, and we are talking about Abraham. That was our topic of study, and we want to look at the relevance of his faith to the Christian living today, because we talked about the ways that Abraham showed his faith in God, and we were able to name all of them. And today we want to see that is it relevant to our living today. And one, we should say that it is very relevant. Christians should have a strong faith in God. Christians should develop a very strong faith in God, just like the way Abraham did. Abraham was very patient with God. He was very patient with God. He learned to be patient, to wait upon God, such that when God promised him, he gave God time to fulfill his word. And so Christians today should also be patient with their God. God will answer their prayers, yes, but it might not be immediate. So there's patience that is required. One of the relevance is that Christians need to be very patient with their God, to wait upon God's promises so that they can get fulfilled at the right time, at God's own appointed time. That is the time of blessings. We also learned that Christians should be ready to face challenges. They should be ready to face tests in life. You see, like Abraham, it was not very smooth for him. And yet he was able to sail through, even as he was focusing his faith on God. So Christians should learn to accept that they will be faced by challenges, and that they pray to God that God takes them through without them waving away from their faith. Very good. And we also learned that Christians need to obey God. They need to be faithful to God. Despite all those challenges, they need to obey their God. They need to be very faithful in their relationship with God, just the same way that Abraham did. Good. And then finally, when Christians trust in God like that, and they are able to trust in God, they are able to be patient with God, then God will shower them with his blessings. They will be sure that God's blessings will come upon them. So that is the relevance of the Christian living today to the Abrahamic faith. Yes, very good. We also want to talk about another area that we will talk about is another relevance is that Christians will need also to make sacrifices in their lives to God. You see, like Abraham had to make a sacrifice to God. Yes, he had to give his only son to God. So what are the Christians today ready to do for God? That is going to cost them. It is going to cost them pain and energy, cost them a lot of psychological torture. Yes, Abraham being ready to depart with his only son, that was a really test. So Christians should be ready to make sacrifices to God. And the Christian faith in Jesus Christ, their faith in Jesus Christ will enable them to overcome temptations. Christian faith will enable them to overcome temptations. And finally, having faith in God will make the Christian today to be the true descendants of Abraham, So it is through faith that we become the descendants of Abraham. I don't know, Lana, whether you are able to name those points that we have been able to pinpoint. We have said, one, Christians should be ready to have faith in God. They should be ready to be patient with God, waiting upon God to fulfill his word. They should be ready to face challenges and tests in their life as Christians, and that one should not make them move away from their faith. Then they should also be ready to obey God and have firm faith in God, then they should also be ready to make sacrifices to God. And the faith that they have in Jesus Christ will enable them to overcome temptations. And finally, faith will make them become the true sons of Abraham. Let us move down and look at the promises of God to Abraham. Now that Abraham had showed his faith in God, he trusted God. God made promises to him. And promise number 1 is that God promised him land. God promised to give Abraham land that could belong to Abraham and his descendants. That is 1. Number 2, God promised to make his name great, to make the name of Abraham great. And he also promised to establish an everlasting dynasty with Abraham. Give him land, make his name great, establish an everlasting covenant, not dynasty, covenant with Abraham. He promised him protection, that he will be his shield. He will protect him against all attacks. Then he also promised that he could give him a son through Sarah, and that he also promised to make him a great nation. I don't know whether we are together. Lana, we are also able to see that God promised that he could bless all the mankind, human race, through Abraham, and that his descendants will become slaves in a foreign land. They will become strangers in a foreign land for 400 years, and they will be harshly treated. They will leave that land with a lot of wealth after God has punished the nation that will make them slaves. Now, that those are the promises of God to Abraham. Can we be able to name them? He would give him land. He could make his name great. He could give him a son through Sarah. He could establish an everlasting covenant with him. He could make him a great nation. He would bless the rest of the world, the human race, through him. And he will bless those who bless him. He will curse those who curse him. And his descendants will be strangers in a foreign land for 400 years. They will be harshly treated by the nation that will host them. God will heavily punish that nation, and they will come out with a lot of wealth. Very good. Do we have any relevance to the promises of God to the Christian living today? Is there any relevance? Do we have anything that is relevant to us? 1, we would say that God is still calling people the same way he called Abraham. So he called Abraham and he told him to follow him, and he promised him good things. So even today, God calls people. And when he calls them to serve him as his servants, as preachers, as pastors, as ministers, God has got various offices, as prophets, he also promises, gives them promises. So God is still calling Christians today. So Christians should be ready to be called by God. Now, another thing is that God values personal relationship with humankind. He had a personal relationship with Abraham. Not just like that this is my child, that I'm God's child. No, it is God's promises to Abraham. They took effect because God had a personal relationship with Abraham. Number 3, we also see that Abraham was ready to leave and move out of the land of his father. He left evils, sinful life. So Christians should be ready to part with the evils that they have been doing. The old nature, they should shed it away and live holy lives. So that is when God, the promises of God will be effective in our lives. And that one brings us to the end of our lesson today. Thank you.
We're very grateful that you found time to watch our content. Kindly press the subscribe button down there and leave a like if the content was helpful to you. Join us in the next lessons. Thank you.